The drums beat softly in the distance, echoing through the golden morning air. The whole village had gathered under the wide palm trees, their voices rising in song and gossip. Today Obinna, the only son of the wealthy Ease family, was to marry a woman no one expected, Ngozi, the poor daughter of a late fisherman. She stood quietly at the edge of the clearing, her white wrapper simple but spotless, her hair adorned with small red beads. Her beauty was not loud, it was the kind that glowed quietly, like sunrise over calm water. But even as she smiled shyly, whispers followed her. She has no dowry. Her mother is a widow. What kind of match is this for the son of Ease? Ngozi heard them all, though she pretended not to. Her heart beat fast, not with pride but with hope. She had loved Obinna since the day he helped her carry water from the stream, his laughter kind and easy. He had said then, "The world may not see you, Ngozi, but I do." And she had believed him. Now, as he stood beside her, tall and proud in his bright blue agbada, she wanted only to believe that his love would silence their cruelty. But his mother's eyes, cold, sharp, measuring, never softened. When the elder poured palm wine into the gourd and passed it to Obinna, the crowd hushed. Obinna lifted it, smiling, and said, "I have found my peace in this woman." He drank, then handed the gourd to Ngozi. Her hands trembled as she drank and placed it down. The women ululated, the men clapped. Yet beneath the music, a bitter wind stirred. After the ceremony, Obinna's mother, Madame Ease, refused to step forward. "I will not dance," she said loudly. "A woman from the dust cannot stand among lions. She will bring misfortune into our home." The words fell like stones. Obinna tried to speak, but his father raised a hand. "Let her speak," he said. "We cannot force love into the heart that rejects." Ngozi lowered her head, tears threatening but unshed. Then softly she said, "Mama, I came with nothing but my heart. I will serve this family as my own." The old woman's face hardened. "Prayers are not food. Love is not wealth. We will see how long you last when the laughter fades." That night, in the small hut Obinna had built for them behind his father's compound, Ngozi sat by the oil lamp, tracing the patterns of shadow on the wall. Obinna came in quietly, kneeling beside her. "Do not let their words touch you," he whispered, holding her hand. "They will see your worth in time." She looked at him with soft eyes. "I do not need them to see me. I only need you to stand with me." He smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Then that is what I will do. Always." Outside, the crickets sang, and the smell of roasted yams filled the night. But beyond their little room, the world was already turning against her, whispers of lineage, pride, and wealth weaving their web. As Ngozi lay down beside her new husband, she whispered a prayer to her late father. "Baba, give me the strength to belong where I am not wanted." In the distance, Obinna's mother watched the dim light from their hut, her heart tight with bitterness. "Let her have this night," she murmured. "By dawn she will know where she stands." The moon climbed higher, silver and silent, as two hearts beat together. One in love, the other already bracing for the battle that marriage would soon bring. The next morning, Ngozi woke to the sound of pounding pestles and women's chatter from the main compound. The smell of fresh soup drifted in, but no one had brought her a plate. She rose quietly, tying her wrapper tighter, and stepped out with a shy smile. The compound was alive, servants hurrying, goats bleating, pots bubbling over the fire. Yet as soon as she appeared, the laughter dimmed. Madame Ease, seated on a carved wooden stool, looked up slowly, her eyes sharp like a hawk's. "Ah," she said coldly, "the queen of poverty rises." The women around her giggled. Ngozi bowed low. "Good morning, Mama." The woman grunted, tapping her stick on the ground. "Morning belongs to those who earned it. Do you know what time wives of men from great houses rise? Before the first cock crow, not when the sun is already laughing at the roof." Ngozi kept her head bowed. "I will do better, Mama." "You will learn not do better," Madame Ease snapped. "Go to the stream. Fetch 10 pots of water. The kitchen needs cleaning. And wash the compound stones, a visitor must not see dirt here." The other women looked at each other. It was too much work for one person, especially on her first morning. But none dared speak. Ngozi only nodded, tying a scarf over her head before lifting the clay pot to her shoulder. As she walked to the stream, the villagers whispered again. "The bride fetches water alone?" Isa's son married a servant, not a wife. The humiliation burned inside her chest, but she bit her lip and said nothing. At the riverbank, she knelt by the water, her reflection trembling on the surface. She whispered, "Father, if dignity has a taste, let me drink it in silence." Then she filled her pots and began the long walk back. By noon, sweat glistened on her skin, her arms trembling from exhaustion. Still, when she returned, Madame Ease was not pleased. "You took your time," the woman said sharply. "Lazy hands make lazy wives." Ngozi bowed again even as her knees ached. "Forgive me, Mama." Obinna returned from the fields just in time to see his wife scrubbing the compound floor on her knees, her wrapper soaked through, her hands red from the rough stones. He hurried to her side. "Ngozi, why are you?" His mother cut him off. "If your wife wants to live here, she must learn our ways. Do not meddle in women's duties." Obinna clenched his jaw but said nothing. He helped Ngozi rise and whispered, "Come inside." She shook her head. "If I leave this undone, she will only make me do it again." That night she could barely lift her arms to eat. Obinna sat beside her, his face shadowed by worry. "I will speak to my mother," he said. "No," Ngozi whispered. "If you fight her she will hate me more. Let me earn her heart." He sighed, touching her cheek. "She has none to give." Days turned into weeks. Ngozi woke before dawn, fetching water, cooking, tending the goats, serving the elders. The servants began to respect her quiet endurance, but Madame Isa's cruelty only grew sharper. When visitors came, she mocked Ngozi openly. "Do you see this girl? My son brought her from the riverbank. A wife without pride, like a fish without scales." Ngozi smiled through it all. Yet when she lay beside Obinna at night, she sometimes turned away and wept silently. He would hold her and say, "Our time will come." One afternoon, as she carried firewood from the forest, she met an old woman sitting by the path. The woman's eyes were bright and strange. "Child," she said softly, "you walk with the burden of two hearts, yours and the one that loves you. But remember, storms make roots stronger." Ngozi paused, startled. "Who are you?" The woman smiled faintly. "A messenger. The world tests those chosen to rise." Then she vanished into the forest shade as if swallowed by the wind. That night, Ngozi dreamed of her father standing by the river, smiling. "Do not fear the ones who push you into the water," he said. "They only teach you how to swim." When she woke, her face was wet with tears, but her spirit had changed. For the first time she no longer felt small. The next few months tested every part of Ngozi's spirit. The more she endured, the more Madame Ise tried to break her. Each dawn began before the sun rose, pounding yam, sweeping the compound, serving the elders, and each night ended in aching silence. But though her body grew weaker, her spirit did not bend. Something had begun to shift in the village. The servants whispered of her patience, her gentleness, her quiet smile even under cruelty. The elders too began to notice. "That woman has the soul of rain," one of them said. "You cannot fight her without washing yourself clean." One afternoon, as Ngozi knelt in the courtyard grinding peppers, an unexpected visitor arrived. Mama Chinyere, the village midwife. She was a tall, wide woman with eyes that missed nothing. She had delivered half the children in Isa's household, including Obinna himself. She frowned at the sight before her. "Hey Ngozi," she said loudly, "why are you on the ground when others rest?" Ngozi smiled faintly. "Mama, work keeps my heart quiet." "Humph," the woman muttered, "and yet you are treated like a servant, not a wife. Does your husband see this?" "He sees," Ngozi said softly, "but his heart is torn between me and his blood." Mama Chinyere nodded, then turned her sharp eyes toward the main hut where Madame Ise sat weaving. "Then let his blood learn shame." That evening, when Obinna returned from tending the goats, Mama Chinyere stopped him. "My son," she said, "your wife's tears are the talk of the village. Do not let your mother's pride destroy your blessing." Obinna bowed his head. "Mama, I have tried. My mother listens to no one." "Then speak with your deeds," she said. "A man's silence can make a good woman invisible. Stand beside her, not behind her." Those words struck deep in him. That night, he shared his food with Ngozi before anyone else, and when his mother glared, he said quietly, "A man eats first with his heart." It was a small act, but in a house ruled by pride, it was rebellion. Madame Isa's anger burned. The next morning she called Ngozi to her hut. "So now you turn my son against me?" she hissed. Ngozi knelt, her eyes down. "No, Mama. I only serve him as I should." The old woman stood, pointing her cane. "You think your fake humility will win you favor? You will never be one of us. Never." Ngozi's lips trembled, but she did not cry. "Then I will remain myself," she whispered. That answer enraged Madame Ise even more. She raised her cane but stopped when Obinna entered. "Mother," he shouted. "Enough." Madame Ease froze. The look in her son's eyes made her heart falter. For a moment, silence filled the air like thick smoke. Then she turned away muttering, "You will regret this foolishness." After she left, Ngozi touched Obina's arm gently. "Do not fight her for me," she said. He looked at her with tears gathering. "If I don't, who will?" Over time, small kindnesses began to find her. Mama Chinyere often sent her soup. The servants brought her firewood. The children, once afraid of Madame Ease's wrath, began to visit her hut for stories. She told them tales her father once told, of rivers that forgave stones, of trees that grew from broken seeds. And one evening, as she sang to the children under the moonlight, even Obina's father, Chief Ease, stopped by the doorway and listened quietly. When the song ended, he said, "Ngozi, your voice brings peace to my bones." She rose and bowed deeply. "Thank you, Papa." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Maybe the gods knew what they were doing when they sent you here." From that night, the tone in the compound began to change. Chief Ease called her "my daughter" before others. Visitors greeted her with respect. The servants began to look at her not as a victim, but as a woman of strength. Madame Ease saw it all, and her jealousy grew darker. Under the moon, she whispered to herself, "If the gods will not shame her, I will." The change in the Ease compound was subtle at first, the kind of quiet shift that only the jealous can truly feel. Madame Ease began to sense that the air no longer bent around her commands. When she spoke, people listened, but their eyes drifted toward Ngozi. Even her husband, Chief Ease, who had once followed her every word, now often praised Ngozi's cooking, her gentleness, her patience. Each compliment was like a thorn under Madame Ease's skin. At night she would sit before her mirror, staring at her reflection as the oil lamp flickered, whispering to herself, "That girl is stealing my son, my home, my pride." One morning, as the sun poured gold through the palm leaves, she called her younger sister, Leone, a woman known for her sharp tongue and cruel laughter. Together they sat on the veranda, plotting like vultures circling prey. "She is too quiet," Leone said. "People love her for it. You can't fight a snake that hides in grass. You must burn the field." Madame Ease's eyes gleamed. "Then we burn." That evening she pretended kindness. "Ngozi," she said sweetly, "come with me to the river tomorrow. We will fetch water together." Ngozi was surprised but hopeful. She had prayed for peace with her mother-in-law for months. Perhaps the gods had finally answered. The next morning the village was still, painted with dawn light. The women walked together, pots balanced on their heads, laughter echoing. Madame Ease's laughter was the loudest, brittle and strange. When they reached the riverbank, she waited until they were alone. "Ngozi," she said, "do you think you are better than me?" Ngozi turned, confused. "No, Mama. I only do what is right." Madame Ease stepped closer, her face hard. "Everyone talks about you, your cooking, your patience, your beauty. You've bewitched my son, turned him against me." Ngozi's voice trembled. "I have done nothing, Mama. I only love him." "Lies!" Madame Ease shouted. Before Ngozi could move, she shoved her hard. Ngozi stumbled backward, her water pot shattering against the rocks. She fell to her knees, gasping as the older woman loomed over her. "You will learn your place," Madame Ease hissed. "You came here with nothing, and nothing you shall remain." Ngozi looked up at her through tears. "If you break me, Mama, the gods will see." But Madame Ease only laughed and spat beside her. "Let them watch." When they returned home, Madame Ease feigned innocence. "She slipped," she told the others, "clumsy girl. I tried to help her." That night, Ngozi sat outside her hut, staring at the stars. Her knees were bruised, her heart bruised deeper. Obina came to her quietly. "My love," he said, kneeling beside her, "I know what happened." She looked up in surprise. "How?" "The servants saw. They told me. I confronted her, but she denied it." Ngozi sighed. "Let her be, Obina. The truth doesn't need my voice, it reveals itself when the time is right." Obina took her hands gently. "You have the strength of the river, it bends but never breaks." Weeks passed. Madame Ease's anger simmered, but Ngozi's calm only enraged her further. Everywhere she looked, Ngozi's name brought warmth. The children adored her stories, Chief Ease praised her humility, even visiting elders blessed her when they came for counsel. Madame Ease began to lose sleep. One night, she went to Leone again. "Your first plan failed," she snapped. Leone smirked. "Then we do something that leaves no room for pity." She leaned closer, whispering darkly. "If the gods favor her so much, let us see if they will dig her out of the earth." Madame Isa's eyes widened, then slowly hardened. You mean? Neoma nodded. Yes. Bury her where no one will find her, and say she left, like an ungrateful wife. Madame Ise hesitated, but jealousy is a disease that eats reason. It will be done, she said at last. Under the quiet sky, the two sisters began to plan the unthinkable, a night of deceit, where earth would cover innocence and evil would think itself victorious. But fate, as the old women say, never sleeps. The night chose silence. No crickets sang, no wind rustled through the banana leaves, only the occasional hiss of the lantern flame in Madame Isa's trembling hands. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight. Beside her, Neoma carried a rope and a small calabash of palm wine, her eyes cold and sharp. Nobody must see us, Madame Ise whispered. Then walk faster, Neoma snapped. The night doesn't wait for the weak. They crept toward Ngozi's hut, where soft humming drifted from inside. Ngozi was singing a lullaby, unaware that death listened outside her window. She had stayed awake waiting for her husband, who had gone to visit a neighboring village. Madame Ise pushed open the door, forcing a smile. Ngozi, she said sweetly, forgive me for waking you. Your husband asked me to bring you to him. He is waiting by the old well. Ngozi blinked sleepily, surprised but relieved. He sent you? Yes, yes, Madame Ise replied, her voice too quick. He said it is urgent. Ngozi wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and followed without suspicion. Her bare feet brushed the cool earth as the moonlight guided their path. The air smelled of rain and something darker, deceit. When they reached the old well, Ngozi looked around. The place was empty. Where is Obina? She asked, turning. That was when Neoma struck her from behind with a thick branch. Ngozi fell to the ground, crying out in pain. The sound echoed once, then vanished into the trees. Mama, why? She gasped, blood glistening on her forehead. Madame Isa's hands trembled. You bewitched my son. You turned him away from me. You took everything that was mine. Ngozi struggled to rise, her voice weak but steady. I took nothing. Love is not stolen, it is earned. Neoma hissed. Enough talk. She threw the rope around Ngozi's wrists, tying her tightly. Tears filled Ngozi's eyes. If this is how it ends, then may your hearts never know peace. Madame Ise faltered, but Neoma pushed her forward. Don't listen. Do it quickly before dawn. Together, they dragged Ngozi to a shallow pit Neoma had dug earlier near the mango grove. The soil was loose, damp from rain, the smell of earth thick in the air. Ngozi's wrapper tore as she fell to her knees. Mama, please, she whispered. If not for me, then for your son. What will you tell him? Madame Ise looked away, her heart thundering. He will think you left him, like the others before. Neoma smirked. Bury her. The first handful of dirt landed softly on Ngozi's feet. She sobbed, her voice breaking into the night. The gods see you. More dirt. More silence. Her muffled cries grew weaker as they covered her to her chest. She kept her gaze fixed on the stars, whispering prayers to her ancestors. Spirits of the river, spirits of my mother, carry my name through the earth. Let it not die here. When the last handful of soil fell, the world seemed to exhale. Madame Ise dropped to her knees, shaking. What have I done? Neoma grabbed her arm. You have saved your place. Now go home before the cock crows. They left her there, covered but not gone. Hours passed. The night turned pale. Rain began to fall softly, washing the dirt, seeping into the ground. Beneath it, Ngozi's faint breaths mingled with the rhythm of the storm. Her fingers twitched against the rope, clawing weakly through mud. And then, something strange. The ground began to tremble. The rain thickened, pounding harder, until a streak of lightning struck the mango tree nearby. The roots tore the soil, cracking the earth open, right where Ngozi had been buried. A flash of light illuminated her face, muddy, gasping, eyes wide with disbelief. She dragged herself out, coughing, shaking, her wrapper soaked. The rain poured like a baptism. She looked toward the sky and whispered, I am still here. From afar a dog barked. A rooster crowed. The village was waking. By the time the sisters returned home, drenched and trembling, Ngozi was already gone from the pit. Neoma froze. Where is she? Madame Ise stared at the disturbed soil, her face draining of color. The gods, they saw. In the distance, thunder rolled again, deep and endless like the laughter of spirits. ChatGPT said. The morning sun broke through gray clouds, its light weak but steady, like a blessing after a night that had tested the heavens. The village stirred to life. women fetching water, children chasing goats, men heading to the fields. But by the old well, something stirred that stopped all movement. A child's scream echoed from the path near the mango grove. "Come quickly. Come see, a woman in the earth." People rushed from their huts, fear and disbelief on their faces. There, beside the cracked roots of the mango tree, Ngozi lay half buried, her skin pale with mud, her wrapper torn, eyes fluttering open. Her breath came in shallow gasps, but she was alive. Old Mama Kalu, the village midwife, was the first to reach her. "Spirits preserve us," she whispered. She breathed still. They lifted Ngozi gently, washing the dirt from her face, wrapping her in cloth. Her lips trembled, words forming with effort. "The earth tried to take me, but the gods said no." The crowd murmured, some bowing their heads. A few women crossed themselves, muttering prayers. "She was buried alive," someone gasped. "By who?" another demanded. But Ngozi's eyes closed again before she could speak. They carried her to the healer's hut, laying her on a mat as herbs were crushed and water boiled. News spread fast. By mid-morning the entire village knew. "The wife of Obinna has returned from the grave," they whispered. When Obinna rode into the village that afternoon, he found chaos. Children ran barefoot through the paths, chanting, "She rose from the earth. She rose from the earth." "What foolishness is this?" he demanded, leaping from his horse. Then he saw her, lying weak but breathing in the healer's hut, her hand resting on her chest. His face went white. "Ngozi." Her eyelids fluttered. "You came back." He knelt beside her, taking her hand, tears forming in his eyes. "Who did this to you? Tell me." She looked at him for a long moment, her gaze full of both love and sorrow. "The night was full of shadows. But I saw their faces before the earth closed over me." He understood without her saying more. His mother. His sister. Obinna stood trembling. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "It cannot be." But the guilt was already spreading through his family's house like wildfire. When he stormed in, Madame Ise was sitting by the hearth, eyes swollen from sleeplessness. Neoma froze, the calabash in her hand shaking. Obinna's voice thundered through the hut. "What did you do?" No one answered. Only the crackle of the fire spoke. He stepped forward, rage burning in his chest. "She is alive. You tried to kill her, the woman I swore before the gods to protect." Madame Ise burst into tears. "She took you from me, Obinna. Everything I did was for you." He struck the floor with his staff. "No mother who loves her child curses his heart to bleed. You have brought shame upon this house." Neoma backed away, eyes wide. "She bewitched you. Don't you see? She lived because of her dark magic." Obinna turned to her, voice low and dangerous. "It wasn't magic that saved her. It was truth." He left them both trembling in silence. Outside, the villagers had gathered, whispering of judgment. "The gods don't sleep," one elder said. "They let her taste the grave so the wicked might be exposed." 4 days Obinna stayed by Ngozi's side, caring for her, refusing to eat or rest. Slowly her strength returned. Her body bore the marks of her suffering, but her spirit, it glowed brighter than before. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, she spoke softly. "I saw darkness below the ground, Obinna. But I also saw light, the kind that waits for those who are not done living." He took her hand and wept openly. "I was blind, Ngozi. I should never have left you with them." She smiled weakly. "You cannot undo the past. But you can choose what you carry from it." And though her heart still ached, she forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because she refused to let hate chain her spirit. As night fell, the drums in the distance began to beat slowly, not for celebration but for cleansing. The chief had called for a council. Justice was coming. The drums echoed across the village square, deep, deliberate, carrying the weight of justice. Every man, woman, and child gathered beneath the great baobab tree, the same place where ancestors were once called upon to witness truth. The air was thick with tension. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. Ngozi sat on a stool near the front, her body still frail but her gaze unshakable. Her husband, Obinna, stood beside her, his jaw clenched. Before them, the chief, an old man with gray hair and a staff carved with serpent patterns, raised his hand. "Bring them," he commanded. 2 guards led Madame Ise and Neoma forward. Their faces were pale, eyes darting, trying to read the crowd. The once proud matriarch looked smaller now, her wrapper untidy, her spirit trembling beneath the judgment of her people. The chief's voice boomed. "We have heard that this woman," he pointed toward Ngozi, "was buried alive, left to die beneath the earth. We have also heard that she has risen again by the mercy of the gods. Let truth speak today. He turned to Ngozi. Daughter, tell us what you saw. The square fell into absolute silence. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Ngozi's voice was soft but steady. It was night. I was told to fetch something from the garden. I did not know it was a trap. They struck me from behind. When I awoke, the air was heavy and my hands could not move. I was beneath the ground. Her voice quivered and the crowd gasped. I heard laughter before the earth covered my ears. It was the voice of my husband's sister, and his mother's cry saying, "Let her inheritance return to its rightful blood." All eyes turned to Madame Ease. Her lips trembled. Neoma shook her head violently. She lies. She's a witch. How else could she have survived the grave? A murmur swept through the people. But the chief raised his hand again. Let the gods decide who speaks truth. He gestured for the diviner, an old woman with white chalk across her forehead, to step forward. She carried a calabash filled with river water and kola nuts. She placed it between the accused and the victim. Whoever speaks lies, the diviner said solemnly, will taste the wrath of the ancestors before this sun sets. She asked Ngozi to speak first. Ngozi placed her hand on the calabash. If I lie, she said, let the earth that once held me open again to take me. Then the diviner turned to Madame Ease and Neoma. Now you. Madame Ease's lips quivered. Her eyes darted to her son who stood stiff and silent, tears brimming in his eyes. I only wanted to protect my family's wealth, she whispered. By murder? The chief thundered. She fell to her knees. I thought she had bewitched my son. I feared she would take everything. Neoma, trembling, clung to her mother's shoulder. She deserved it. She took everything from us. Gasps broke through the crowd. Obinna turned away, his face twisted in pain. You took her life for money? His voice cracked like thunder. Then let that money bury you too. The chief slammed his staff on the ground. The gods have heard enough. The land rejects the wicked. From this day the wealth of this house will be given to the woman you tried to destroy. And you, Madame Ease, and your daughter, you will serve her land for 7 years, so you may learn the labor of those who earn what they own. The crowd erupted, some with approval, some with shock. The drums began again, slower this time, the sound of judgment sealing itself into memory. Ngozi sat still, eyes glistening with tears. It was not triumph she felt, only the deep, quiet ache of release. Madame Ease crawled forward, her hands clasped. Forgive me, child, she whispered. I thought I was saving my son. Ngozi looked down at her. You buried me with your hands, but I rose with the earth's mercy. I will not bury you in return. The gods have already judged. For the first time, the crowd saw her not just as a victim but as something more, a woman reborn from injustice, carrying the strength of forgiveness none could understand. As the people dispersed, Obinna remained behind, watching his mother and sister being led away toward the fields. He turned to Ngozi, his voice breaking. You had every reason to curse us all. Yet you chose peace. She wiped a tear from her cheek. Peace isn't a gift, Obinna. It's a price, one I've paid with everything I had. The sun rose red that morning, bleeding light across the hills, a day of consequence and redemption. The drums that once called judgment now beat slower, signaling the beginning of atonement. Down by the edge of Ngozi's land, Madame Ease and Neoma arrived under guard, their fine wrappers replaced by plain work clothes. Their feet, once soft from comfort, now touched the rough earth they had once disdained. The villagers gathered at a distance, whispering, watching the fall of a once proud family. Ngozi stood beside the river, her posture straight, her face calm but unreadable. She looked at the two women without a trace of mockery. The land will not shame you, she said quietly. Only your hearts can do that. You will till the soil with me, and what we grow will feed the poor. Madame Ease bowed her head. The words she had once used to wound now came back to her like thorns. A woman from dust cannot stand among lions. She had buried the same woman who now stood before her, breathing, commanding, forgiving. The day's labor began. The air was heavy with heat, and the soil was thick after last night's rain. Neoma groaned, wiping sweat from her brow. I cannot do this, she muttered. This is work for slaves. Ngozi glanced at her, her voice steady. Then today you will learn that the ground feeds all, rich or poor, kind or cruel. It makes no difference to the earth what name you carry. The words stung more than whips. Hours passed. Madame Ease's back ached, her hands blistered. But when she looked at Ngozi she saw no pride, no vengeance, only a strange grace. Every movement Ngozi made was purposeful, every command given with dignity. She led not as a queen of gold but as one crowned in humility. By sunset, when the day's work ended, Ngozi carried the last basket of yams herself to the village square. The poor gathered, and she handed each family food for the night. When Madame Ease and Neoma saw this, something in them cracked. That night, when the stars hung low, Madame Ease approached her. Her voice was low, thick with shame. "I cannot sleep," she said. "The face of the girl I buried haunts me. Why do you show me kindness when I showed you none?" Ngozi looked at her steadily. "Because anger is a fire that burns the hand that holds it. I will not live in smoke any more." Tears spilled down the old woman's face. "I called you cursed. But you are blessed, far beyond me." She fell to her knees, clutching Ngozi's hands. "If my son could see me now, he would not know his mother." Ngozi knelt too, helping her rise. "Then rise new," she said. "Let the earth that witnessed your cruelty now witness your change." From that day something shifted. Madame Ease no longer spoke with pride. She rose each morning before dawn, working beside Ngozi without complaint. The villagers who once gossiped now whispered different words. The proud have bowed. The buried has risen. The gods truly see. Neoma, however, struggled. The bitterness still lived in her eyes. She resented the pity of others and the calm forgiveness Ngozi carried. "You think you are holy," she spat one afternoon. "You want everyone to see you as a saint." Ngozi stopped planting and turned to her. "No, Neoma. I want everyone to see that the same hands that destroy can also heal. Even yours." For a long moment, Neoma said nothing. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She turned away, and though her back was stiff, something inside her began to bend, the first fracture of pride. As the weeks passed, the fields flourished. The yams grew thick, the corn tall, the river clear. It was as if the land itself forgave because its keeper had chosen mercy. Ngozi became a symbol not just of survival but of rebirth. When the harvest came, she called the whole village to a feast. Food piled high on mats, drums beat in joy, and laughter filled the air. At the center, Madame Ease and Neoma served others. The same hands that once plotted harm now passing blessings. When the chief arrived, he smiled and raised his staff. "The land is healed," he declared, "because the woman who was wronged did not seek revenge. Her heart has done what even the gods admire, she turned the curse into seed." That night, as the firelight flickered against the dark sky, Ngozi sat quietly by the river. The reflection of the moon rippled over the water, calm, patient, eternal. She whispered to herself, "They buried me to steal my life, but the earth gave it back richer. Sometimes the grave is not an end but a womb." And behind her, Madame Ease's voice trembled. "Forgive me again, daughter?" Ngozi smiled faintly, not turning. "You are already forgiven, Mama?" The word, Mama, broke what little pride remained. Madame Ease wept silently. In the distance, the drums continued, no longer of judgment but of rebirth. The days passed into weeks, and the air of the village softened. The same people who once whispered cruelly about Ngozi now spoke her name with reverence, the one who rose from the earth itself. But peace, as gentle as it seemed, was not yet whole. One heart still wrestled in silence, Neoma's. She worked beside Ngozi every day, her hands moving through the soil with practiced strength, yet her spirit churned like a storm beneath calm waters. She had once believed power was everything, that wealth and bloodline made her untouchable. Now she saw her mother, Madame Ease, humbled and quiet, learning to live with peace. But Neoma could not forgive what the world had seen, her shame, her fall, her defeat at the hands of the woman she had buried. One evening, when the fields glowed gold under the fading sun, Ngozi walked to the riverbank to fetch water. There she found Neoma sitting on a rock, staring into the current, her face drawn and pale. "You work harder than before," Ngozi said softly, "but your heart grows heavier. What burdens you?" Neoma's jaw tightened. "You already know. I want to hear it from your mouth." The younger woman laughed bitterly. "You stand here like some saint. Everyone loves you now, the same people who spat at your name. And my mother, the proud Madame Ease, bows to you like a servant. Do you not see what you've done? You've taken everything, our honor, our name, our pride." Ngozi's expression didn't change. She knelt beside her, scooping a handful of water and letting it fall slowly back into the stream. "Pride is not honor, Neoma. It's poison that blinds the heart. The day your mother buried me, I thought my life was over. But it was my pride that truly died that day. What rose after wasn't vengeance, it was peace." "Peace?" Neoma snapped. "What peace can you know after what we did to you?" Ngozi met her gaze. The kind that comes when you stop needing others to lose for you to win. The words sank deep, but Neoma turned away, her voice trembling. You speak like someone who's never known rage. You don't know what it's like to be born in the shadow of your mother's shame, to fight for scraps of love and respect. Ngozi reached out, touching her shoulder gently. You are not your mother's sins. You are your own choices. For a moment, Neoma froze. Then all the anger, guilt, and grief she had buried spilled out. I hated you, she cried, tears breaking free at last. I hated you because you had what I wanted, love. Everyone admired you even when you were poor. And I thought if I destroyed you, maybe I could breathe again. Ngozi's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed calm. Then breathe now. Because I forgive you. The river wind stirred between them. Neoma blinked, disbelief cutting through her tears. You forgive me, after all of it? Yes, Ngozi whispered. Because forgiveness doesn't erase pain, it frees it. You cannot heal if you keep carrying what broke you. Neoma's breath hitched and she buried her face in her hands, sobbing until her voice cracked. The sound carried across the fields, the cry of a heart finally breaking open. Ngozi wrapped her arms around her, holding her the way a sister would. I don't deserve this, Neoma wept. None of us do, Ngozi replied. That's what makes it grace. By the time the stars began to appear, Neoma's sobs had quieted. She looked at Ngozi through swollen eyes and whispered, Teach me how to live again. Ngozi smiled faintly. Then start with tomorrow. Come early, before the sun rises. We'll plant together. The new seeds must go deep if they are to grow strong. Neoma nodded weakly. It was the first true nod of surrender. The next morning before dawn she came, barefoot, carrying her mother's old basket. The sky blushed pink as they began planting side by side. Madame Ys watched from the distance, tears running down her aged cheeks as she saw her daughter finally find peace in the same soil that once bore their shame. By midday the three women worked in rhythm, the past and the present blending like the woven threads of a new cloth. Villagers who passed stopped and stared, not out of curiosity but awe. This is a story our children will tell, murmured an old man. How the buried became the root, and from the root came forgiveness. That night a quiet celebration filled the air. Drums sounded softly, not in wild rhythm but in slow, healing beats. The women danced, Madame Ys fragile yet smiling, Neoma lighter than she had ever been, and Ngozi radiant like the dawn itself. As the fire crackled, Neoma turned to her. You should hate us, she said softly. Ngozi smiled. I did once. But hate is heavy, I chose to walk light. In that moment as the villagers clapped and sang, it was clear, the story had turned full circle. The woman once buried in darkness had become the light by which others found their way home. Years later the village no longer whispered about tragedy, they sang about it. The story of Ngozi, the woman who was buried and rose again, became a hymn that mothers sang to their daughters at dusk. Children grew up believing that the earth itself had a heart, and that when you do wrong, it watches, waits and forgives, just like her. Ngozi's hair had grown streaks of silver, yet her face still held the quiet strength that came from a life rebuilt with love, not vengeance. Her home stood at the edge of the village, surrounded by wide fields bursting with yam, maize and cassava, the same land that had once been soaked with tears and betrayal. She lived simply, her laughter light and her spirit unburdened. Every morning she walked barefoot to the river, carrying a small clay pot. The air was always cool then, the mist floating over the surface like a memory that refused to fade. She would kneel, scoop water and whisper a prayer. Sometimes for herself, sometimes for others, always for peace. One such morning Neoma joined her. She was now married to a humble carpenter, her hands calloused but her eyes soft. She carried a basket of flowers and placed them by the riverbank. Mama Ngozi, she said quietly, for that was what everyone called her now, I came to thank you. Ngozi smiled, turning her face toward the sunrise. For what, my child? For forgiving me before I learned to forgive myself. Ngozi chuckled gently. Forgiveness is not something we give once. It's a thing we practice every day, like tending the soil. Some days the weeds grow faster than the crops. Neoma laughed softly. Then I'll keep tending. They sat together in silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. Behind them, children's laughter echoed, the next generation chasing each other through the fields, carefree and full of promise. As the years rolled on, Ngozi became the quiet matriarch of the village. People came from far and near to seek her counsel, farmers asking about the rains, wives asking about patience, daughters asking about strength. She never gave long speeches. Her wisdom came in simple words. "Water the heart," she would say. "That's where the roots begin." During festivals, songs were sung in her honor, not for riches or battle victories but for compassion. One verse became the villagers' favorite. "She was buried by envy, but rose by grace. The ground took her body, but heaven kept her face." Madame Ease, her once cruel stepmother, lived her final years peacefully in Ngozi's compound. Old age had taken her sight but not her tears. On her deathbed she whispered, "Child, I took your life once. Yet you gave me mine back 100-fold. Ngozi held her hand and said simply, "Then rest. The earth forgives too." After her passing, Ngozi buried her beside the river, the same river that had witnessed every turn of their story. The villagers gathered, heads bowed, as Ngozi sprinkled petals over the grave. "Here," she said softly, "two hearts that fought have found peace." Seasons came and went. One evening, when the air was cool and the sun had just kissed the horizon, Ngozi sat on her veranda watching the sky turn orange and purple. A bird landed near her feet, small, brown, and unafraid. She smiled, feeling something deep in her chest loosen, like a knot finally untied. That night, as the moon rose full, she lay down on her mat, her breathing slow, her eyes on the stars. And when dawn came, she did not wake. The entire village mourned her, not with wails but with quiet songs and flowers. They buried her by the river, beside her stepmother and the memories of all that had been lost and restored. Generations later, when children ask who she was, their mothers still tell them. She was the woman who was buried alive, not in the ground but in pain. Yet she rose again not to seek revenge, but to teach us how to live. The river still flows, clear and steady, whispering her story to the wind. And when the sun rises just right, it paints her resting place in gold, as if the earth itself remembers her grace.